I'm Dr Emmylou Rahtz, and I've been working on the qualitative strand of research within the Inclusivity project with my colleague Dr Lucy Szaboova. And qualitative research, rather than looking at the data and the numbers, is much more about having an in-depth conversational sort of understanding of experiences, whether that's in health or business. And for this particular research, we've been exploring how small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, have reacted to shocks and crises, both in the past and in relation to the current COVID pandemic. And we were actually in a really fortunate position that the Inclusivity project was still quite early on when the pandemic hit us. So we had an opportunity to focus on how organisations responded to the pandemic. And our research has looked both at Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly and more globally, and we've been interested in non-profit organisations as well as businesses. And we've really been interested in their resilience, so how they've been able to respond to something like a pandemic or other shocks and crises. So when we're talking about resilience, I think we've probably heard that word more than usual in the last 2 years on the news and even on social media, but it's important to have an understanding what we mean when we're talking about resilience. So resilience originally had an idea that it was about bouncing back. So for an entity like a business to be able to get back to the state it was in prior to a crisis. For a business, that might mean that it was able to offer the same products and services as before to the same sorts of customers. But actually, the research around resilience shows that there's an increasing interest in an idea of transformation. So this is about making larger scale changes, adaptations like large scale adaptations, like innovating into new areas and really diversifying. So rather than bouncing back, we might think about this as bouncing forwards. And rather than a business offering the same products and services, it might be that they're able to innovate new products and services and explore new market sectors where they can offer those products. And learning is really important in this idea of resilience. So it's an idea that a business has the confidence within itself to be prepared for an uncertain future. There's a confidence that you'll be able to adapt to whatever future shocks and crises come at you. Through our qualitative research, we've been really interested in exploring the actions that different small and medium enterprises might have taken to help them respond to shocks and crises, both in the past and to COVID. And we're really interested in external factors. So there might be internal things like changes in management, but actually we've focused on external things that might be happening at a local, regional, national or global level. These might be economic things like recessions, it might be extreme weather events like flooding or hurricanes or cyclones, or it might be health related like the pandemic that we've all been coping with. And I think there are really two sides to what we're exploring. One is the outcomes of the actions, so which actions were successful and helped a business to be resilient and which ones were less helpful. And then what are the different things that affect that success? So are there different things like having money in the bank, which might support a business to survive through a crisis? Things like having strong social capital or social networks that they can draw on? Or is there external support like political or financial support available to organisations? We've pursued two different areas of qualitative research within this project. The first has been an evidence synthesis of the global literature. And an evidence synthesis is a really systematic way of exploring previous scientific research that has been published in your area. And you start with potentially thousands of different research articles and then go through a very systematic process of filtering through them, combing through them to get closer and closer to the papers that really deal specifically with your research question. And our research question has been, what are the actions that small and medium enterprises have taken in the face of shocks and crises? We're now getting to the stage where we've got that smaller number of papers and we're analysing those. And some real strengths of this research have been that it's been able to have a really global view. So this isn't specific to Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. We've been able to look globally, and we've been able to look at all different kinds of shocks and crises and how they affect different industries and different kinds of organisations. The second area has been primary qualitative research. So this is when we've been talking directly to businesses themselves, and this has had much more of a focus within Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So we've carried out some interview research where we've had direct conversations with a number of businesses. We've also carried out some qualitative survey work. So for the interviews, you're really able to have an in-depth conversation and probe to get more detail and get a really personal response. With the qualitative survey, we get a bit more breadth, but we still get to hear about the experiences of organisations in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly in their own words. So we've got that depth and that breadth. And the kinds of things that we've been asking businesses about is how they've been responding to the COVID pandemic specifically. We've been asking them about adaptations they might have made on a smaller scale, or whether they've made large-scale transformations, and very much with an interest in what lessons they've learned. So what worked for them? Will they keep it in place in future? Or were there things that they wish that they'd done differently, and things that would have helped them to behave in a manner that helped their business to be more resilient? And we've really had an eye on the implications for the future throughout this. So has this helped businesses to think in a more inclusive way? Have they had to have more conversations and think about different experiences of their employees that are perhaps older or have disabilities or long-term health conditions? We're still in the process of analysing those data, and we really look forward to be able to report these results in the coming months. With qualitative data especially, it really evolves right up to the finish line, because the whole write-up is part of the analysis process. With all research, and perhaps even more so with qualitative research, it's really important not to start talking about the findings until you're really confident in them, and that usually involves them going through a process of peer review. With qualitative research especially, the findings really keep crystallising and becoming firmer and clearer throughout the write-up process. So it's going to be a while before we can share those results. But meanwhile, I'd really encourage any organisations to reflect on their own experiences of the pandemic and think about what lessons you've learned. What are the things that you will keep and take forward? And what are the things that would help you to behave differently if another crisis were to come along? When I've been analysing the interview data that we've collected and looking at the responses to the survey, I've been really struck what a wide variety of different responses there have been, and this reflects the different sizes of organisations and the different kinds of industries and different ways of working that they've got across Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. But there have been some amazing examples of businesses being really creative in finding individual ways for them to respond to the pandemic and to support their employees.